what's something that you think most people misunderstand about discomfort, Eddie?
It's a necessary evil, unfortunately. So nobody likes it, right? I don't like it any more than anybody else, as much as it might sound like I'm a sadistic human being. I'm not, right? I'm definitely looking for comfort and that stuff, but it is the only place where you can learn and evolve. You're not going to learn. You might learn a few things, but you're not going to, if you're uncomfortable, whether it's, work life or otherwise, this is the place where you learn. All right. Because you won't want to go to that place again. And therefore you're going to learn a lot to adapt to then when you're in that place again, it doesn't feel uncomfortable anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the crux of it. There's no progression when you're comfortable.
Welcome to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, the leading weekly show for Australians who want to learn how to unlock their full self, health and wealth potential. I'm your host, Bushy Martin, and each week I go deep with the best investors, experts, leaders and founders to find out what it takes to break free from the grind, discover freedom and to live by design. Subscribe now and join me and get invested in the life that you really want. Let's get started.
Hi, freedom fighters. Let me ask you this. How far would you go to achieve your dreams? Would you run 3,900 kilometres right across this great country? Would you scale the highest, harshest peaks just to feel alive? Now, let's go even deeper. Would you endure freezing nights in a cramped tent, risk death on crevices and snow bridges, suffer through bleeding lungs, blistered feet, and still wake up with the will to keep going? What if I told you that the same mindset that gets you up a mountain or across a desert plain is the same mindset that you're going to need to be hitting that financial summit of property success? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Sustainable success in anything long-term, property included, isn't about quick hacks or shortcuts. It's about putting one foot in front of the other when everything in your body is screaming at you to stop. It's about endurance, resilience, patience, and persistence. And it's about becoming comfortable being very, very uncomfortable. And no one embodies that spirit more than our very special returning guest today. Eddie Tchigique, better known as Eddie the Frenchman, is preparing to do something only a handful of humans have ever even contemplated: to run from Cottesloe Beach in WA right across the country to Bondi Beach in New South Wales, attempting to set a new speed record. Now, that is over 3,900 kilometres in blistering heat, relentless wind and brutal solitude. And this isn't the first taste of his physical extremity. Before that, he climbed two of the world's most dangerous peaks. We're talking about Argentina's Aconcagua, and I bet you I've stuffed that up, and I'm sure you'll pick me up on that in a minute, Eddie, and of course, Alaska's Denali. Two expeditions that tested every cell in his body, as we're about to hear, and forged the mental steel he now brings to every and each challenge. So what does all this have to do with your property journey? A lot more than you think. Because whether you're climbing a summit or climbing out of debt, whether you're running across the country or running the long race of investing, the rules and rewards are exactly the same. Just as Eddie unpacked during his first appearance here on Getting Invested way back on episode 274 in April 2023. So if you haven't had a listen to that yet and really dug into his awesome property journey so far, make sure you do. It's a really great listen. But today we're going to unpack what it really takes to go the distance. So let's dive in and welcome back and let's get invested again, Eddie.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bushy.
Mate, I love what you're doing. I'm in constant awe of the challenges that you set yourself in every aspect of your life and your ability to follow through on that. But I want to start right at the summit, literally now, mate, and I'd want you to take us back to that very first spark of an idea. You know, the moment when a mate's mountain climbing videos changed your life. What was it that gripped you so tightly at that stage?
Yeah, I was in Australia actually. I just happened to I was watching the French news and I saw a story on a guy that his nickname was the mountain sweeper. So essentially someone that was cleaning up the mountains as well as climbing them. And then I saw the name and I was, I know that guy's from my business school. So I was like, oh, that's obviously I was interested even more into the story, but the views were spectacular, and he was completely out of breath at the top of that mountain, and he was explaining what he was doing and that he was working, obviously like climbing, but he liked the environment as well. So he wanted to clean up all the trash that unfortunately lazy mountaineers just leave behind them. And so then I had a look at the mountain, which was Aconcagua in Argentina. Obviously, I had never heard of the thing before.
Yeah.
But anyway, I contacted him straight away the same day, and I was just amazed. I was curious. It just looked just so raw and hard and so unique and just out of this world sort of experience, and I was drawn to it straight away. So that's how it all started. So I had nothing to do. I'm from the southwest of France, so we've got the Pyrenees there. So I used to go hiking with my parents, but I never really climbed as such. I was always connected to the mountain, but it was more around skiing and snowboarding and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was different. He really drew me in his own experience with it.
Yeah, love that. Now, most people, if they got excited about that, would do some small hills to kick it off, but that wasn't you. You aimed straight for Aconcagua, which is nearly 7,000 meters high, I understand. Why the big leap, and what did that climb actually teach you about yourself?
Yes, so he always wanted to climb Mount Everest. That was his aim. He always wanted to do an 8,000 meter peak, and obviously you got to start somewhere. And so we started talking about Everest, and I started watching all the docos I could put my hand on, and I was starting to read about them, and it just absolutely fascinated me. I just became so drawn to it, and I don't know if you've ever seen that picture. There's a cartoon picture of a switch, like a light switch.
Yep.
And it's either utterly obsessed or uninterested, and there's nothing in the middle. So you're either one or the other, and that very much defines who I am. So I got absolutely obsessed with Everest. And obviously it was sort of straight away. I mean, it was on my map. It was definitely something I was interested in, but you cannot just start with Everest. So I needed to start somewhere. That friend of mine had climbed Aconcagua, so it was a pretty logical step for me. So Aconcagua is high, obviously it's high altitude, but it's not technically hard. So it's more or less a high altitude hike, I guess. There's a bit of snow and ice, but it's not technically. You don't have to have much experience. It's hard in terms of the endurance and the altitude, and that covers some of it. But that's why I decided to go for it. So that was going to be my first high altitude experience, and I was going to see how it, pan out, and first expedition experience, I guess.
Yeah.
So I discovered a lot about expedition, on a big mountain like this, and a lot of it is not really shown in the brochures, and so I can cover some of it if you want.
Yeah, please. Because I mean,
that climb.
Yeah, please, because even some of the little things, I know that a lot of people wouldn't appreciate how different life is at a different altitude. As soon as you get into high altitude, everything changes. So talk us through that. Put us in your shoes as you're tackling this, because I don't think many people really understand the intimacies of what you're contending with.
No, 100%. And I didn't. You can watch some docos and that, but it's just nothing can prepare you for it. So. And look, basic things like water, there's no tap. You can't turn the tap on and you get water you can drink. So everything's about melting water, which takes the higher you go, the more time it takes. So it's, you got to collect the snow or ice, and then you got to melt it, and it just takes forever, right? It's on top of all the other tasks you got to do. So as much as we don't see it as a luxury, in our home or daily life, it really is on the mountain. In terms of, you talked about the altitude, the acclimatization. So you can't just climb up. So you cannot just get to base camp and then climb up to camp 1, 2, and 3, and then summit and then come back. that trip itself took 3 weeks of, so essentially you acclimatize, which is you climb a high and then you sleep low, and then you climb high and then you sleep there, and then you climb higher, and so on and so forth. So you're going in steps, I guess. And what that does is it pushes the body to create more red blood cells, which essentially you make better use of the oxygen you have.
Yep.
Because the higher you go, the less oxygen there is. And it's not so much there's the same amount of oxygen, that the molecules, because of the pressure, they're further apart. So it feels like there's less oxygen. So you got to get your body to acclimatize to this. And to give you an example, at high camp, we were measuring our oxygen saturation to see how we were acclimatizing as we went. And at high camp, my oxygen saturation was in the low 80s. So at sea level, you'd go straight to the ER, and you'd get treated pretty quickly. Whereas at high camp, it's kind of pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how the body adapts to this. High altitude just makes everything a nightmare, right? When you get higher up, just getting dressed is just, oh God, I got to put my pants on, and everything's just out of breath all the time. It's, you get bad headaches. It's frustrating. It's not nice. You don't see that. Even in the videos, I haven't seen a single video where someone talks about how you feel when you go higher up. Your appetite goes, everything's just hard. And when everything's hard, the body sort of shuts down bits and pieces. I just concentrate on keeping you alive, I suppose. The toilet situation is a pain in the butt.
Literally.
To speak, on Aconcagua, you just got to find the biggest boulder you can find and get behind it, and you have feces everywhere. There's nothing nice about it. The weather, because you on in a mountain pretty high up, it just changes very quickly, and the most important thing when you climb is read the wind, and how, because the wind chill can make or break a climb, I guess.
Yeah.
And and the temperature fluctuations are absolutely incredible as well. It can be very cold one day. It's always cold, but sometimes it feels hot, which is just because of the sun reflection on the snow and so on and so forth. So it could be -5 or minus, even 10, but you can feel seriously hot, and you have to strip off, but then it obviously gets very cold as well. So that's pretty hard to deal with. Now on Aconcagua, I got quite sick high up, and in hindsight, I definitely was getting altitude sickness, and it could have got worse, I guess. We stayed at high camp for 48 hours because of the weather. So I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't really drink. I was just a terrible headache. The summit push was an absolute slug of a thing. Obviously, I wanted to get up there, so I did it. Coming down was a nightmare. We got lost on the way down. Everyone was tired. And it's interesting because this is the first time where obviously I pushed. I got to the summit, and then the excitement sort of goes away as you go down, and the tiredness and the fatigue really kicks in. And all I could think of was, I just want to sit down for a little bit and close my eyes for just a few minutes. But that's what.
That's a dislike. So there's a dislike right there.
That's how mountain is. Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. So anyway, we got there in the end. Look, it just, what it taught me is I could see that, well, first of all, I enjoyed it. Like, there's a bit of love-hate relationship, but I enjoyed it overall. Like, as in, the elation of having gone through that challenge and all these difficulties was just out of this world for me. And I saw that I could deal with the harshness of climbing, and I could acclimatize somewhat to high altitude, and I was okay up there, despite obviously the issues that I've had. And I couldn't endure the pain, and I could suffer, and I was okay with it. And it's not something that I knew about myself. And at that point, I understood that this game was for me. So not necessarily climbing.
Yeah.
At the time it was climbing, but the game of going through pain and being okay with it, because it's gonna end at some point. So it's very different to, and we'll talk about this with the charity that I'm backing up. It's very different to being in pain because you're sick and it's not your choice and you don't have the end of the tunnel. You know, on the climb, as much as some of them are pretty long, you know that in 3 weeks' time, hopefully you would have summited and you'll be eating a big steak in Mendoza in Argentina. Do you see what I mean? So that changes the picture. So that first climb was eye-opening, and it was just it was the best experience, really.
Yeah, I mean, you're very humble by nature, and I understand you're saying it's very different from someone who's got a terminal illness, for example, and they know that the end's coming, but it is still life threatening because you are putting your life on the line. There's no two ways about it. There's a lot of people who die on the. You described it as a big hike. Well, I don't think a lot of other people would see it as a big hike, Eddie. And I know. Just as a mere mortal who's never really put myself to that level of risk, I remember years ago where we were in the States and we went skiing near Denver up at Beaver Creek. Yeah. Now I had flu. I had flu at the bottom, of which I didn't even think about. By the time I got to Beaver Creek, I felt like a 90-year-old. I couldn't breathe. I was on an oxygen tent for 4 days because I just couldn't get around. And I couldn't believe what was going on in my head. It was, and that's not even a scratch on what you put yourself through. And if again, this mightn't be a good analogy, but what surprises me about this whole exercise, you put yourself through that pain, you prove to yourself that you can do it, and I think there's a level of self-confidence that comes out of that, and a different approach to life that emerges once you've survived through those challenges. So I'd sort of can see where that goes. But I'm not a female and will never give birth, but I see a lot of women who put themselves through extreme pain and challenges giving birth, and then you'd think they'd never want to do it again, but a few months later they're saying, I want another child. So there must be something in the human psyche that allows us to challenge ourselves to go through that and go, right, I've done that, I've proved that. Yes, there was a lot of challenge with it, but now I want to go on and do that again. Something I'd like to circle around, you've talked about those extremes from sort of boiling hot to minus 40, which must be absolutely brutal as a consequence of it. How do you actually mentally prepare yourself for being so constantly uncomfortable?
Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know how you look at it, but as human beings, we're very good at forgetting the hard stuff and keeping most of the good stuff. So even after you come back from a climb and within a few weeks, you've probably forgotten a lot of the really painful and annoying things. And you're probably looking at the next pick you can sign up for, which is good, I guess, but it's impossible to replicate the extremes, right? So what you can do, obviously, is prepare yourself physically. I think the most important thing, and that goes with everything in life, is the why, right? Have a big enough why. And mine was getting ready to tackle an 8,000 meter, whether it was Everest or some peaks in Pakistan or something like that. Yeah. That was my big why, and I had some steps. So I had a process to go through that I wanted to tick, I guess, to make sure that I was ready, because I've got a family and I'm not a daredevil as such. Do you see what I mean? Like, I'm happy to push myself, but I want it to be as safe as possible, I guess. Yeah. And so, and quite honestly, without that big why being climbing Everest one day, I would have thrown the towel, or anyone would throw the towel, and you'd never go back, because the thing is, at least 90% of it is just brutal. Yeah. It's not enjoyable. Let's face it. There's enjoyment in the pain, but that's in hindsight. When you're in it, there's just nothing enjoyable about it. All right. When you get up and it's freezing cold and you're cold for 50 minutes and you cannot have a warm shower to warm you up, there's nothing to warm you up. All right. The only thing that's going to warm you up is you moving. So putting some layers on and you moving. There's nothing else. So the other thing to get ready for this is, I mean, you gotta seek some discomfort in your life, right? There's too many comforts. I mean, I was thinking about, so I've got I've got a car where it's on an app in my phone, and in the morning when it's cold, whether I'm with the kids or not, I set the climate control so that it's ready when I get in, right? But I know that this is comfort that makes me weak in a way, right? So I know I have to have things in my life that counter this, because if everything that I do is creating comfort for myself and making things easier, you slowly drift and drift and drift. And then whenever there's something that's hard, and things will happen in your life, whether it's work or some work issues or family or health or whatever, then you won't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So how do I prepare with it? Again, physically and mentally, in terms of, little discomfort or pushing yourself in different areas of your life. That's probably the best way you can do it.
Yeah, I love it. I love the fact that you continue to challenge yourself, because when we spoke on the podcast last time, you spoke in depth about the biggest threat to great is good, and let's face it, Australians, I think, without realising it, we've probably got the best lifestyle of most parts of the globe, and we take that for granted. So because we're so comfortable and get used to being comfortable, a lot of us don't challenge ourselves or test the edges, and then wonder why we don't sort of achieve the things that we would like to. Something else I'd love you to comment on, because in preparing for our chat today and going through your story, I know that you witnessed death on the mountain. That's a very powerful and very confronting moment, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that, and what changed for you after that experience, if anything.
Yeah, it was very confronting. So that was on Aconcagua. That was pretty early on on the expedition. We were going from Camp 1 to Camp 2, and it was like a slope with like loose rocks and that. And we saw a guy got hit by a falling rock, and unfortunately we learned afterward he had a punctured lung and he had a internal bleeding. And so there was a team of Argentinian military at the time on the mountain, so they just happened to be climbing the same route at the same spot, and so they helped him out. We helped out, and they brought him back to base camp. We kept climbing, like acclimatizing. And when we came back to base camp, probably 3 hours later, we learned that he passed away. And that was strange. It was surreal, because it's not like the ocean. Like the ocean moves, so you can see the waves, you can see the danger. Do you see what I mean? Whereas the mountain it's still, you don't see it. It's there. Obviously, they can have avalanches, this was just a rock falling from higher up and with enough momentum to kill someone. So that guy was American. We learned afterwards, and he was just in wrong place, wrong time. Right? That's all it is. Wrong place, wrong time. He didn't do anything wrong. He just, yeah. And so anyway, it was, my first thought, he was there climbing alone as well. So he didn't have any partner or anything.
Yeah.
And so he was thousands of k's from his loved ones when he took his last breath. And so as much as he had all these guys trying to help him, he would have been such a, I don't know. He was a rescue paramedic, I think. So he knew, I think he knew what was going on, but you never completely know. So, he was aware. He wasn't, probably in a good shape, and he was pretty dire. But yeah, he would have been, his last moments would have been, like, it's just sad, just thinking about it. So straight away I thought about his family, and that, because at the time when I heard about his death, I knew that they didn't know, obviously, and they just thought he was climbing and hopefully he was having a good time. So anyway, very strange. The good. The story around this is interesting. So I came back to Australia after the climb, and I was just on some climbing forums, and I was probably a good 6 months after the climb, and I saw a question from someone asking for some info on an American guy that had died on the mountain around the time that we were there. And I was like, oh, I'll check the dates. And essentially she wanted some detail because she had very little detail from the Argentinian government, and she didn't get any of his belongings back and anything. So she just wanted some info on what had happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, no way, that's, same. I mean, it was just 1 in a million sort of thing. Yeah. Anyway, I contacted her and I sent her the pictures that I had taken, and I explained to her what's happened and this, that, and the other. And then she knew I was climbing again after Aconcagua. I was planning on going to Alaska, in fact, the year after. And she said, oh, do you mind if I send you some of the ashes, some of his ashes, so you can spray it on the, in Alaska? And I said, yeah, that's fine. And unfortunately, they never got to me because I stuffed up the street number for my work address. And anyway, so I had, and then you can imagine what state I was when I realized the mistake that I had made. So I had, I told her, and she was fine with it. She said, oh, he will love that. He will travel around the world and, go to different places. He loved it. So, but anyway, you're very, very confronting. It just, it puts you back on earth. These types of things really put you back on earth. You're a fragile human being on a big, big mountain in a very harsh environment where you probably don't belong.
Yeah, and incredible. And on a nod, it's really good that you managed to connect with his partner, because I can't even imagine what it must be like for the partner and the family, because that they know that he was taking a risk. He knew he was taking a risk, and everyone who sets out on this sort of an adventure knows that there's big risk attached. But then being left in the dark and getting very little information, the sense of closure that you've probably given her as a result of sharing what you did, it's probably meant a lot more to her than you probably realise.
Probably, yeah. Especially that I was pretty young, I didn't fully realize. I guess I'm a bit more mature now, and I fully realize, I guess, to your point, the impact that would have had. Whereas at the past, I was just giving her a story and some pictures.
Yeah, amazing, mate, amazing. Now, I know that your next climb was Denali, and from everything I've heard, that sounds like next level hardship as far as the comparison was concerned. What was the hardest single moment on that climb, and how did you manage to push your way through it?
Yeah, look, to put some context, Denali is in Alaska. It's very close to the Arctic Circle, and therefore the weather is just known to being just ferocious.
Yeah.
And so the other thing, the vertical gain, and I didn't know that at the time, but the vertical gain between base camp and the top is the largest on any mountain on Earth, which means that, the amount of vertical you need to climb between base camp and the summit is, the largest of any mountain on Earth. So obviously that adds to the, just adds to the time really of the expedition more than anything. It's all snow and ice, so it's highly crevassed. There's a big glacier you got to travel through. Obviously, there's a lot of snow, so there were avalanches daily. Not necessarily on the road, but you could hear, and you can hear them, and like just you can hear the rumble, and then you look, and there's a massive plume of snow coming down. Anyway, just reminds you of where you are, because sometimes you get complacent with things, again, because everything's still around you, and you can get complacent because of it.
Yeah.
The access to Denali is very peculiar as well. So typically you drive and then you hike, and Denali, you got to fly onto the glacier. So you fly out of a small town in Alaska called Talkeetna, which is, it's a funny mix of, there's a tourist train. So when you do a cruise in Alaska, a lot of the time you get a train that goes to Talkeetna, and that's a stop for tourists. So it's a weird mix of tourists and climbers, and it's just very interesting. But anyway, so you fly into the glacier, and the pilot told us that there's a big sharp turn while you're going down to land on the glacier, and he said, "Oh, there's going to be all sorts of alarms going off, so don't be too worried." But we went around that peak, and all of them. I'm not kidding. So you've got like ear muffs because you can't hear anything in there. So you hear what the pilot's saying and stuff like that. And anyway, so and he goes around that outcrop, and then he turns like sharp turn right as he goes down to land onto base camp. Everything just goes like beep beep beep, terrain. And you're like, Jesus, what's going on here? Anyway, eventually you land on the glacier, which is just the whole experience. I mean, it's really, it paints the color of the expedition that you've signed up for. It really does.
Yep.
And then you realize when you're at base camp, you realize that because they can't fly in bad weather, so you do realize you're stuck there unless the weather is clear enough for the plane to come back and get you. So that just adds another element, I guess, which is completely out of your control. In terms of the hardest thing on that climb, I've got 3 that really stick to mind. So we were traveling. So there's a big glacier pretty much throughout the mountain. We're really between base camp and camp 1 or even 2. That there's a big glacier, and there's some big crevasses in there. Now, what happens a lot of the time? There's snow bridges, which is essentially, picture a crevasse, which is essentially a crack in the ice, if you like, and some of them can be pretty wide and can be very deep as well. And when it snows, and then it accumulates enough to create a bridge. So essentially it covers the crevasse, right? Sometimes. So you think you're walking on firm snow, but in fact you're walking across a crevasse. So sometimes the snow is hard enough and you don't even know, and you've done it, and you never know you've walked across a crevasse. And sometimes they don't. So anyway, we're traveling from base camp to camp 1. We're having a break. So we all roped up, by the way. So typically you've got a backpack and you're putting a sled as well, because you got to carry all your equipment. And so the sled in front of me is roped to me, and then my sled, and I'm roped to my sled, and my sled is roped to the guy behind me. And so that's, you've got 4 or 5 climbers like this. And what that does, if anyone falls into a crevasse, you've got another 4 guys that can stop the fall.
Or they all go with you.
Well, that was my thought the whole time. That guy's big.
My God.
Anyway, so we were having a break between base camp and camp 1. I sat down on my sled, and as I got up, I went straight through the snow up to my hips, and so my legs were dangling. And so I quickly went forward. So my belly was on belly, arms, and torso was on the snow. And I got myself out of that. I didn't go all the way through, which was good, but that definitely got my heart pumping. And again, it reminds you, these small reminders. So that was one of them. The second one, look, the toilet situation was no better on Denali. The only difference between Denali and Aconcagua is the park rangers give you a bucket. So picture the bucket you use to wash your floors, for instance, no bigger than that.
Yep.
And everyone needs to do their thing in that one bucket, right? That is one bucket for the group, and you put a bag in there, and then you obviously dispose of the bag, but the bucket is your toilet. So unfortunately, during the night, I needed to go, and it was snowing horizontally outside. You could hear the wind flapping on the tent, but anyway, what can you do? So I got out, and I went. So the bucket, there's a cover on top of the bucket, and I took the cover off, and it was just horrible. I had my pants, on my ankle. The snow was just smashing my legs, and it was just the worst situation on the planet. And I sat on the bucket, and I could, forgive me for saying this, but it's part of the experience, but I could feel the warmth of the last person's going to the toilets, essentially. So there you go. So I was sitting there feeling the warmth of the last person and having snow coming horizontally on my face and legs. So that was an experience.
That's unbelievable, mate. No,
and the third thing is, again, it's one thing I didn't know. So wake up in the morning in your tent, everything's frozen solid, right? Your socks, your pants, everything. And you got to have to put that on as well. You can't just wait for it to defrost. So you just deal with it.
Yeah.
My water bottle, in fact, one night so I had my water bottle in my sleeping bag. So my -40-degree sleeping bag, and the water bottle was against my skin, and the water was frozen in it. So everything literally freezes in there. Unfortunately, as soon as the sun comes up, it warms up the tent pretty quickly, and all the frozen condensation then starts dripping on you. So
Like a sauna.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So not the nicest of experience, but yeah, that in terms of the hardest thing, that those three things were really, it's a daily thing, right? It's not just a one-off, and again, everything's hard. Now, how did I push through? Look, the thing is, I knew I wasn't going on a beach holiday in the Caribbean, so I knew what I was up for, to some extent. Again, you forget a lot of the hardship, but it's going to be hard, and you're going to have to push it. And I had 25 kilos in my backpack and 30 kilos on the sled that I was pulling. Now, whenever the slope was because it's not always straight, sometimes there's a camber on the slope, and sometimes the sled would
over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then it was, all of a sudden it felt harder to pull, and fair enough, the sled was upside down, and and all this, you do this 50 times a day, right? So you stop, you have to put back, and so yeah, it was hard. The days were long. The oxygen was, again, the high altitude was tricky. It was cold. We had winds, and then it was hot, and then you had headaches, and you always start the day cold, like I said, for Aconcagua, and you'll feel that way until you start moving. So it's, nothing else will warm you up. You will have to warm yourself up, and so that was hard. But again, my why is the reason I succeeded once more, right? I knew I was there. Nobody put a gun to my head and said, sign up to this and off you go.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I've been doing endurance stuff for the best part of 20 years probably now. So I thrive in these environments, and the harder, the better. It just gives me even more of a sense of achievement. And same thing when I go for a run. Obviously, if I go for multi-days, it's a bit of a different story. But if I go out today and it's windy and hailing, and I'll feel more alive than in any other conditions. So I really like that. Yeah, those conditions.
Yeah.
But again, and bear in mind that my preparation for Denali was like learning from Aconcagua was even more pointy, and I was fit. I was fit, and I had an exceptional climb. I was strong the whole time, and that really showed. Yeah, but I knew I could push for a long time as well. You draw from the experiences as well.
Of course. Yeah, you're better mentally prepared now. From what you shared with us, from the crampons to crevices to pee bottles, there's absolutely no glamour in any of that. How do you balance the real raw, gritty reality what you're going through, with your ongoing love to keep doing it? Does it come back to that why, or is there more to it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, the why is. To me, it's the crux of it all, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. It's a love-hate relationship. I might be a bit different from some other people, but realistically, I'm still a human being, and I'm still looking for, and I'm aware of it. So I put things in place, but I'm still looking for the shortcuts. I'm still looking for the easy thing. I'm still, like the car, heating up the car. For instance, that's a great example. I want that comfort. I don't want to get in a car and be cold for 5 minutes. so I'm still very much like this, but look, those things are better in hindsight than during. It's not. I did the most on trail in South Australia with my dad on a bike, and we had some very big days, and that was hard. But now that I look back, and this was the best experience on the planet.
Yeah, the bond.
And these things typically.
Yeah, doing something like that with your father, and I don't know how old your father is, but I followed that on on your socials. That wasn't an easy ride.
No, he's 72, and I pushed him pretty hard too.
I'm sure
you did exceptionally well.
Yeah, and what an awesome bonding experience. That's something you'll both remember for the rest of your lives.
100%.
Question.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot in that because you personally achieve something, but when you do it with someone who's family and others, that there's a bond there that never leave you in that regard. But which I guess
he impressed me. Like I drew a lot of things from that. Like he's 70, I think he was 72.
Yeah.
And I pushed him hard. Yeah. I didn't pushed him like he was 72. I pushed him really hard, and it blew my mind. Right. But these things they're challenging. That's why you're there. That's why you sign up to these things. You don't sign up because it's going to be easy. So on the bigger mountains, and you see that on Everest now, there's some commercial outfitter that now have like big tents and heated tents and TVs and couches and even beds at the base camp. And I just want none of this, because that's not the point. The point is to be there for a few weeks or a few months and be in a harsh environment and be pushed. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
I think, once more, we really were equipped in for getting the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And so that really helps into signing up for the next thing, or, having the next kid, like you said, for women.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, but you got to have the main goal. That's how you do it, because again, it's, there's, when you're in it, there's nothing enjoyable.
Yeah, spot on.
Sorry, I shouldn't say there's nothing enjoyable. It is enjoyable, but you see what I mean? Like 90% of it, realistically, you could eliminate.
Yeah, totally. 100%. There's not a lot of fun in any of that. Let's fast forward to now then, because you're about to run across the country and again, challenge yourself way beyond what near mortals will do. But why this and why now, Eddie?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know what else would I be doing. No, look, I've been running long so running came from climbing, right? I needed to get ready, and therefore, I live in Adelaide in South Australia. I mean, we've got the hills, but we don't really have mountains. And even if I was going to Victoria, it's not really quite up there. So running really kept me fit and ready for those big expeditions.
Yeah.
And so I've been running for the best part of 18 years. I've covered anything from 12Ks to over 200Ks in one go. So multi-days is another challenge, though. It's the next step for me. And that's really something that I thrive on these challenges. Now, my wife is from Jamestown, which is in the mid-north of South Australia, and Ned Brockman, who crossed Australia back in 2023, did go probably 40 minutes south of Jamestown. So someone from Jamestown actually told me that, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he was doing at the time. Yeah. And told me Ned Brockman's crossing Australia. He's coming through Spalding is the town that he was going through at the time. Yeah. And I thought, oh yeah, that's nice. And I didn't think much of it, but subconsciously, I think a seed was planted that he was a young guy and he was fairly new to running, and it is something that is, I don't know, it was not even on my radar. It was probably too big a thing for me to contemplate at the time, but obviously it's feasible. Yeah. Anyway, it took me 2 years to find the courage to tell Tash, my wife, of my new plan, and I don't think she was that surprised, because there's a few things going through my head that she's aware of. So anyway, all the I know all the stuff I have done over 18 years. Also, have tested me and just feel like this is the next logical step for me. So that's why, yeah.
Yeah, and what I love about what you've just shared, because you're a couple and a family. No one achieves any sustainable success in anything without being part of a team. I have immense respect for you and your ability to continually challenge yourself, but I also have immense respect for Tash in that she knows who you are, and she knows that if you didn't do this stuff, then that would impact on you, and that would also impact on your relationship. So to have the awareness to go, well, Eddie needs to do this. I need to support him, but do it in such a way that as a team and as a family, it's a good thing rather than you're being selfish. You're only worrying about yourself and what happens to us. A lot of other people wouldn't embrace this exercise in the same way that you and Tash and the family have. So I think there's, you would have heard me say before already that success is a team sport. There's no question about it. And to have that level of support and everything that she's doing in behind the scenes to make that, I have immense respect and admiration for both of you. So I wanted to put that on the record. But look, circling back to the property space, because, at the end of the day, that's the thing that we've all got our head in. And, in property investing, I've often said that you make your money in the preparation and then in the patience and persistence, not in the actual property purchase, which everyone tends to focus on.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about how you're preparing for the run, both physically and mentally, for this upcoming record attempt.
Yeah. Look, I think it is exactly the same in endurance sports. In fact, it's exactly the same in a lot of different areas. Whatever you set yourself to do or to achieve, it's no different to investing. In fact, as you know, Tash and I invest, and we've got the exact same approach in terms of, the education, the team, and having a big why that we're working towards, and that's our North Star, I guess. Yeah. In terms of the run itself, look, it typically takes years for the body to adapt. Right? Our bodies are extremely smart at adapting to anything and everything.
Yep.
But it takes time for the body to properly adapt, and in terms of, your tendons and tissues to take the load that you're expecting them to take, and your cartilage hardens up as well. So everything, and obviously your heart and lungs and just overall system, everything adapts, but it takes a huge amount of time, and it doesn't mean you're not going to break, but it means you've got less, or you've got more ability to take on the load. This run is all about inflammation management, and what I mean by that is even when we walk or run or just normal distances, your body, you've got inflammation in your body. That's how it works, because your tendon rubs and so on and so forth. But typically then you stop that morning, and then you do your life, and then you go to sleep, and you might do another session the next day. But by the time you get to the other session, your inflammation level have come back to base.
Yep.
So on a run like running across Australia, where I now have to do around 113 Ks a day, that is a huge amount of inflammation that needs to be dealt with and managed, so that it doesn't go in overdrive, too quickly. I guess it will at some point. I think I don't think you can get away unscathed, but so you're trying to manage that. So there's two things: the mindset, obviously, and you got to adapt your brain and mindset to, I guess, get into that. It's going to be a tough environment. It's going to be stressful. You're going to be fatigued, and that's going to go for a long time. So it's not a one race anymore where, maximum 48 hours and you're home, shower, in bed. And so you gotta get your mind ready for that and to process that pain day after day after day.
Yeah.
The thing is, I've got an 18-month training program with a coach in terms of strength and conditioning and running, and that started in January. It's going to go up to the start in August.
Yeah.
But I always say I've been getting ready for the last 18 years for this thing without knowing it, and the 18-month is just to tweak the machine a little bit more to be ready for it. So obviously physically is a lot of run volume. There are tests, this. So in 2 weeks, I'm doing 300 Ks in 3 days. So 100 K a day for 3 days in the mid-north. So where it's windy, boring, and it's beautiful, but for 10 minutes, not for hours on end. And obviously, yes, strength and conditioning is a big thing. In terms of visualization in terms of the mind, visualization is a big thing. And I'm working on this in terms of, things will go wrong. The body will send you signals that typically you would slow down or stop for that session and then rest for that day and then try again the next day and see how it is. Do you see what I mean? Whereas this is a world record, so there's no stopping. The Ks that I need to achieve daily are the Ks that I need to achieve daily.
Yeah.
Walking, running, crawling, however it's done. And therefore, it's just trying to visualize how you mentally going to deal with, because you will know straight away that something's not right. Yeah. And it's not just something's not right as in you've got a little pain, it's something's not right. I've had enough niggles in the past that I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I kind of know pretty quickly what it is and what's happening. And it's having the mental ability to not eclipse it, but not let me slow down, impact me, because, my first thought will be, is that ever going to get better? Because tomorrow I'm doing another 113 Ks and then the day after and so on and so forth. Yeah. But the thing is, the body does some amazing things that are medically, that there's no medical logic sometimes to how the body behaves. Yeah. And so I got to start thinking like this, and I got to grab this thought every time there's something. So it's all about mindset is huge in these things, right? Physically, we can do a lot more than we think we can, but the mindset is in a lot of areas in life, whether it's investing or work or life or running. Yeah, your mindset can make or break you.
You're 100%. And I think that, that just listening to you then, having the self-belief in your body's ability to adapt and adjust and self-heal in the middle of pain is something that in our current medical world, where we're popping a pill for just about everything, a lot of people don't get their head around. So getting your mind in that zone that goes, okay, I'm going to be okay because my body's going to adapt. It's going to do what it needs to do. I just need to keep going. Pretty incredible, and you sort of touched on the fact that, physically there's no question it's going to be really hard, but you'll be okay. Mentally is where the real battle will come. Can you sort of give us a bit of it from an investor's perspective? What can we learn and apply from that to what we're doing, particularly in the property space?
Yeah, it's interesting. The way we built it, it's all about self-preservation, right? So from the era where we're in caves, it was all about preserving our energy, because we didn't know whether we were gonna have dinner that night or whatever it was. And unfortunately, we kept this in us, and therefore the mind will stop you well before the body actually starts breaking down. And the mind is even going to send you little signals that it doesn't mean your body's starting to break down. It just means, we're getting to the limit here. So I'll send you a signal so that naturally you will stop. Yeah. Because that's how we're wired. Yeah. Now, so our mind protects us, from the dangers, from the perceived risks and fears and so on and so forth. And so fears and risks will be the main thing that your mind directs you to. It'd be the first thing, right? So for example, if you tell me you should put your money in real estate, and I've got no education or no knowledge of real estate, my first thought is going to be, what are the dangers of me getting into real estate? Okay, I might lose my money. I'm going to have debt, and debt is bad. I've always learned that, right? I've always heard that, sorry. Yeah. And so on and so forth. So it's exactly the same. So obviously, whatever's in running or climbing or whatever is exactly the same, investing exactly the same in everyday life. Yeah. And so it's a matter of being very conscious of how your mind works, and that it's going to try its hardest to stop you and find the dangers, I guess, to protect you. Yeah. And so I know I use my experience to tell my mind to bugger off, or I've got techniques to derail these thoughts. And so, but I know a lot of the days will be, for instance, terrible. It'll be dark. Everything will be falling apart. And at that point, I'll have my crew. So I'm still forming it, but Tash, my wife, will be part of it. And she's known me for 21 years now. So she knows me very, very well.
Yeah.
And so it's always going to be just one more step. And then why are you doing it? All right. So there's, and I'll come back to the investing in a second. There's two things for me in my why, just to explain what's going to drive me when things get really tough. And they're going to get tougher than I've ever experienced. I've got no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And so obviously the mission is deep in my heart. When I get to Bondi Beach, it'd be the result of a huge amount of work. All right. And something that arguably I can easily fail at. Right. I've signed up for many races over my years. And in fact, I could sign up for a 200K race tomorrow, and I know I feel in my body that I will finish it. Yeah. Right? Whereas this mission here is got a just because of the distance, it's got a high failure percentage to it.
Yeah.
Whether I want I want to admit it or not, it's not me being defeatist. It's the reality of it because of the length of it.
Yeah.
And the second thing is I'm backing up Red Kite, which is an association that does absolute wonderful work for parents whose kids are going through cancer. Sorry, I get pretty emotional every time I just think of my kids.
Of course,
and that will help me because I've listened to enough stories of these parents to know that my suffering is, first of all, self-inflicted, and second of all, as I said earlier in this podcast, it will stop at some point. Whereas they don't know, they're still in the dark. I cannot even fathom what they're going through and how their life is just. And unfortunately, a lot of them, they still have bills to pay, and life keeps going because a lot of the time they've got other kids as well, and these other kids are being impacted. And so anyway, so Red Kite and the work that they do and the money that I'm trying to raise for them to make a difference to a lot of families is, I know it will drive me very hard when things get pretty dark for me.
Yeah.
So all of this, just to go back to the investing piece, you've got to educate yourself. So I've talked to a lot of people that have done the crossing themselves. I've read a lot of books of other people that have crossed Canada or the US. Yeah. So I'm learning a lot to make sure that I know as much as I can.
Yeah.
And therefore make a better decision. So, learn from other people's mistakes and stuff like that. Obviously I get all the facts. And with our investing, we've built a team. And that team, because you cannot know everything about everything. And that team, you can bounce ideas with, they can guide you with their own experience. But at the end of the day, you have to push through with conviction, and you have to let go of the fears and your mind trying to stop you and protect you. And the only way you can do that once more is knowing enough to be comfortable with it and having a big enough why. And that big enough why is, for us, it's the lifestyle, what we want to do with our life.
Well, mate, and thanks for sharing that. I agree with you. There are families for no good reason who are struggling with life-challenging events for their kids and others that they neither deserve nor understand. So I love the fact that you are working hard for them to do that, and I encourage everyone who's listening to donate to that extremely beneficial cause that's going to help the families that are struggling through that, and I'll talk about that soon. But you touched on fear, and sadly we live in a world now where I think fear dominates everything. The media, it's their only last call to keep us engaged. So they are driven by fear to keep us scared, so that we keep engaged. So I see fear as a growing issue in that regard. How do you deal with fear, whether it be on the mountain, on the run, in life, or in property? What can you share with us that will help others to tackle that?
Yeah, look, they're very different depending on the environment. Obviously, on the mountain, it's real, but you don't see it. It can be one wrong move, or again, wrong place, wrong time, which is completely out of your control. So that's a bit hard to control, but you can't let it overtake you, because when you're in a place or mindset of fear, you don't make good decisions. Your reasoning is clouded as a result. So you got to work on this. No, you can't work on it once you're there. You got to work on it beforehand, and it's in everyday life. You don't need to be on a mountain. Everything you can work on in everyday life, you can use in a lot of different scenarios. In terms of life, look, I mean, most of what we do is pretty calculated risks, I guess, and so the fear sort of goes away because of it. And for me, it goes back to, again, our why, what we want to achieve, and how long we've got to achieve this, and therefore we put a plan together which we're comfortable with. But to be comfortable with it, or at the start, because when we started investing, I was no different to anybody else. I was like, oh, we need to be, have some debt, and now we owe money to someone, and that's danger. What if things crash? And all these questions are normal. Yeah. But the more I educated myself, and I'm not an expert. I know enough to be dangerous, as I say, but that allowed Tash and I to be able to invest and do these things. So, and that's what I do with everything, whether it's the mountain or, again, running. As I said to you, I talk to many people. Obviously, I've got a team of medical specialists in different areas, and I can ask them questions about different things, and you just educate yourself, and then you learn things, and then you realize that a lot of your fears, there's just nothing behind, and it was just your mind trying to protect yourself, and you're trying to do the best thing by you, but a lot of the time it's not.
Yeah. No, I love your thoughts on that, mate. I know we've only just scratched the surface, and we could talk for hours, so we will get you back to talk in the run up to the massive cross country run and beyond, because there's a lot of learnings, and a lot of people will be inspired by what you're sharing with us. But before I jump into the old bushfire lightning round, which I always put guests through, is there anything else you want to leave us with in terms of key takeaways that we need to take on board from what you've shared with us today?
Look, the main thing for me is, and I think about it all the time. So, for instance, I'll give you so first of all, I'll say that you have to define what is important to you. And I'm still a work in progress in that area, right? And I still see myself looking at a nice car, for instance, like could be a sports car, or whatever, like a luxury car, and I'm like, oh, I'd like to be driving this instead of my car. But then, that guy has done things that may not align with what I want to do to get that car. Yep. And I'm very conscious of this, and so I derail my mind when that happens to, well, hang on, what is important to you? All right. So is it working 80 hours a week and not be able to run and spend time with your family? Or is it working a bit less, obviously doing a good work at what you're doing? But yeah, there's always drawbacks to everything. So you just got to define what is important to you and work hard on getting that, whether it's a lifestyle or whatever it is. I think that's very important, because I can guarantee you that, and social media is terrible for this, but I can guarantee you that every single person on this planet has some form of problem they're dealing with. Guaranteed, All right. The guy that's got the mansion at the end of the street, you probably don't see him getting up at 4 a.m. to take a flight on the Monday morning and come back on Friday night, working all hours of the night and so on and so forth, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that's very important because, and I say that because just to go back to what I'm doing, a lot of people will see the 18 months of posting on social media that I've done on my training and that. But I can guarantee you that these 18 months, they're important, but the 18 years that I've spent doing that stuff are a lot more important than these 18 months. So define what is important to you. It's not easy, right? As I said, I'm still a work in progress and I'm very aware of it and I'm trying to put things in place.
Yep.
But that is the crux of it all, really.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, I, as you know, Eddie, I get to talk to people every day, and the first question I ask them is, you know, it's basically, what is your why? And 9 out of 10 people say, got no idea, haven't thought about it. No one's ever asked me that before. If it's one thing that I think people need to really take some time on and not just do it once, but do it regularly, because things do change, is get crystal clear on what's really important to you, what are your values and how you want to live. Because if you do get crystal on that, everything else will fall into place once you actually take that step. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Right now, mate, I'm going to sort of strap on the blindfold and the cigarette and hit you with the fast questions in the ambush round. To kick those off, what's your current favourite quote and why?
So I don't know who it's from. I've got an app on my phone where I write all sorts of quotes that I read and I never put who it's from. So forgive me on this, but it goes, we are what we repeatedly do. And excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit.
Love it.
So, and what got me to where I am is my discipline to, I train every day. I'm up every day, which means I'm in bed early, which means what I put in my body, I'm careful with. I want to put some good stuff, and they're just habits. They're not motivation. I'm not more motivated than anybody else to run. It's just my discipline has then become a habit. So I just get up and run. And if I don't do that, I feel weird.
Yeah, it feels unusual if you don't. And that's what I love about that. You've set a non-negotiable, basically. It's not up for question. It's not a nice thing to do. It's a thing you will do. And once you get into that repetitive exercise and build up the 18 years of work that you've been doing consciously or unconsciously to achieve what you're about to do, is really what it's all about. So that consistency and that relentless persistence is clearly the key. You've touched on the running exercise. Are there any other happy habits, rewarding rituals, or daily disciplines that you adopt that had set you up for success in most areas of your life?
Well, I think I know my it goes back to running again, but my morning routine is definitely that. So again, it's I start my day very early, and it's with a workout, and that's pretty much every single day of the year, except if I'm traveling, which makes it a bit tricky. But this is my win. It grounds me. So I'm starting the day, and I usually come back home, and most people are still asleep. Which is, I take nothing out of this. I'm not just like I'm better than that guy because he's asleep, but it is certainly my win. So everything that day, hopefully it doesn't, but everything that day can go to crap. And I've got something that I've achieved already, which is, again, it grounds me.
Yeah, I love it. Love that. Slightly different subject. What's something that you think most people misunderstand about discomfort, Eddie?
It's a necessary evil, unfortunately. So nobody likes it, right? I don't like it any more than anybody else, as much as it might sound like I'm a sadistic human being. I'm not, right? I'm definitely looking for comfort and that stuff, but it is the only place where you can learn and evolve. You're not going to learn. You might learn a few things, but you're not going to, if you're uncomfortable, whether it's, work life or otherwise, this is the place where you learn. All right. Because you won't want to go to that place again, and therefore you're going to learn a lot to adapt to then when you're in that place again, it doesn't feel uncomfortable anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the crux of it. There's no progression when you're comfortable. It's just black and white. The other thing is, again, nobody likes discomfort. I mean, how do I say it? It sounds brutal, but I'm the same, right? Me included. We're human beings and we're lazy. We're looking for shortcut. We're looking for self-preservation and so on and so forth. And again, me included.
Yeah.
And so, you got to seek discomfort in your life to achieve things. And you don't have to be the president of the United States or the CEO. That's not what I mean at all. But you have to push yourself a little bit. And it doesn't have to be every day, but you have to have your little things or your little aim that you really need that in your life. It's going to make you a better person. It's going to shape you better.
100%. On an allied topic, I heard someone say a while back, and I had never thought about this until they shared it with me, but if you don't choose your own discomfort, your own challenge, then something or someone else will. And at least you've got the choice to choose your challenge and learn and grow from it. If you don't, the challenges aren't going to go away. They'll just be ones you probably don't want and probably don't enjoy. So love that. Completely different topic. If you could only eat one trail food, whether on the mountain or on the run for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
It has to be a baguette.
Of course.
I love my bread and pastries. It's it's in me forever, I think, being a Frenchman. So yeah, there you go.
Love that. Final one. I want you to finish this sentence for me, Eddie. The key to sustainable success in life is
defining your why and building a process to make it happen. That, I come back to this, and I've come back to this all the time, but it is, there's especially with social media, there's always going to be someone that is better, that is richer, that is better looking, that runs longer, that runs faster, that climbs higher than you. There's always going to be someone. You're never going to be the top of the crop ever. And so you got to make a conscious effort to define what is important to you. And you got to stop comparing yourself. And naturally you will compare yourself. And I do that as well, right?
Yeah.
But you got to stop yourself. And I see that in the running circle. I'm part of a running club, and I know enough people now to see that, people say, oh, I'm just doing the half marathon because other people do the marathon. And you know what I mean? There's always going to be someone doing something bigger. Yeah. I'm about to run almost 4,000 Ks, and someone will be running across Canada, which is 7,000 Ks, or someone will be faster than me, So define your why. You're never going to achieve a successful life, the real definition of a successful life, if you're constantly comparing yourself and wanting more, it's part of us. We always, we forever unhappy with what we've got, I think. But it's a matter of being conscious of these shortcuts in our minds and putting things in place so that you can define what is important to you. That's the most important thing in my mind.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm a stuck record on that subject, as you know, Eddie. And I guess I used to get frustrated about it. I don't so much anymore, because you can lead a horse to water, and then they've got to decide to drink. But I know from personal experience and dealing with the likes of yourselves and many others who have achieved what they want in life, that taking that hard step, and it's not easy, but taking that hard step of really looking inside and working out who you are, what's important to you, getting to your values, and then getting crystal clear on what you want to do with your life and how you want to live is the most important step. And there'll be people listening to this right now whose ears will be shutting down, their eyes will be glazing over. It's like, oh, there's that damn why thing again. That right there, if that's how you're feeling right now, that is your signal to actually step up to the plate, because ignore that at your peril is what I would say. For those that think, don't worry about that. That we're too busy to worry about that. We'll just go out and buy property or do this or do that. If you don't take that fundamental step, and if you don't, this is where that discomfort, you've talked about discomfort. If you're feeling uncomfortable about doing, because as you said, it's a waste of time or other, that is your flashing red light to say, I need to spend some time on this, because I guarantee that those who do take up your message on that, Eddie, they won't know it now, because it's not where you're at, it's where you're heading. That's the key thing for me. So, and you know, coming back to that commentary around, don't compare yourself with others. Don't criticize yourself either in that same aspect, because I don't care where anyone's at today. It's the journey they're on and where they're heading that's the most important thing that they need to continue to focus on. So I absolutely love that. Mate, there'll be a lot of people listening into this that, are really inspired with what you've shared with us. It's been a very moving conversation from many levels, Eddie. How can we get more involved and or support your record-breaking cross-country attempt?
Yeah, there's a few areas. So first one is my website. So FrenchmanOnTheRun.com. So on the website, there's a link on the homepage for donations. So if you have a look at Red Kite again, I looked around. I didn't just Google Kids Cancer Association. I know firsthand of the excellent work that they're doing. So and what I'm my aim is $1 million, and which sounds like much, but it's really only $10 for 100,000 people. So if you've got $10 to spare, and it's almost I don't know when this comes out, but the end of financial year is coming up. So but regardless, so yeah, my website, FrenchmanOnTheRun.com. Otherwise, I'm on Instagram under Frenchman on the Run, or Facebook under probably Eddie Tchigique or Eddie Frenchman would be the main page. And obviously on LinkedIn under Eddie Tchigique, you can find me there. So I update what I'm doing in terms of the progress, and I put a bit of info and detail on the preparation, and like I said, the nutrition or the strength and conditioning and where I'm at and stuff like that. So hopefully you can get something out of it.
Right.
And worst case scenario, get entertained.
Yeah, and I've been following your story, and the running and the inspiration that you get from that is awesome, both yourself and Tash in that regard. So I really want to thank you, Eddie. It's been a absolutely phenomenal journey so far, and clearly you're only just getting started. And what a reminder that success isn't a sprint; it's definitely an ultra marathon. So whether you're climbing Everest or you're building a property portfolio brick by brick, it's clear that you've got to train your mind just as hard as your body. And Eddie's story really proves that consistency beats intensity every time, that discomfort is the price of transformation, and that the summit isn't a place, it's a process. So here's some takeaways for you, freedom fighters. To go the distance, you've got to fall in love with the grind. Be willing to do what others won't, and stay the course when others fall away. In property, in endurance, in life, it's never the fastest who wins. It's the one who refuses to stop. So make sure you follow Eddie's journey at FrenchmanOnTheRun.com, and we'll have that link in the show notes. And if you're as inspired as I am, Eddie is making his mammoth cross-country run of over 3,900 kilometres, covering about 112 kilometres per day, a 34-day straight, which is absolutely unbelievable. And that's pretty much the equivalent, I understand, of about 2.5 marathons a day or thereabouts, which is his mission to push his physical and mental limits to new levels in order to raise funds and awareness for Red Kite, who do a fantastic job at supporting kids with cancer and their families. So make sure you do make a donation now by clicking the show notes link to his website. And make sure you also share this episode and his awesome endeavour with friends and family, so they can also spread the word and get motivated to move mountains one step at a time. And if you're motivated like I am, join us on the Property Hub Collective Facebook community, which Eddie actually drives and ministers. And we'll be happy to host a Facebook Live or Q&As or whatever you think's appropriate, where Eddie can share more of his incredible achievements and learning. So put a message on there if you'd like to do that, and we'll get that organised. And you can sort of unpack the details of his similar success in property investment as well. So as we close, I want you to ask yourself, what's your mountain? What are you willing to run for? And what are you waiting for? So thanks again for joining us here on the Property Hub. Now go out and climb your next peak. Do it one step at a time. Until next week, remember to live by design, not by default. And as always, get invested. So let's make sure we keep the conversation going, Eddie.
Thank you. Thanks, Bushy. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Get Invested on the Property Hub podcast channel, your home for property investment insights and inspiration. Make sure you subscribe to Property Hub for free. Get your weekly dose of Get Invested inspiration, along with every episode of Realty Talk, Australia's top online property show for red-hot property investing news and insights direct from industry leaders and influencers. And finally, I'll see you next time.